later on after we've shown the film. You're in for quite a treat tonight. The Ordinary Miracles, the Photo Leaks New York is really an astounding documentary, and we're gonna go back in time to the 1930s to 50s to look at social documentary at its best. It's a very well put together film that we obviously have seen already and enjoyed very much, so we want to share it with you tonight, and we hope you'll get quite a bit out of it as well, to look back at New York over 80 years ago and see some amazing pictures and get quite a bit more of the background of what made the Photo League a very special place to be for a lot of photographers who became quite famous in their own right. Founded by Paul Strand and Baroness Abbott in the mid-1930s, 1936 to be exact, and then later on joined by greats like Ansel Adams and Dorothea Lange, Edward Weston, Marianne Palffy, and Marjorie Collins of farm administration fame as well. So there's a whole slew of great photographers' work you'll see, and I think it's a great example of what photography could already do then, and there's a lot more that photography can do today, I think. So I hope you'll enjoy the film, and I look forward to speaking to you after we've seen it. Thank you very much. All right. Firstly, let me rectify my omission from the introduction. I should have, of course, mentioned the makers of this great documentary, which are Nina Rosenblum and Daniel Allentuck, who put years of their life into this production. And while we unfortunately can't have them here with us tonight, Mark was in the States recently and had the opportunity to meet up with them and learn more from them what it took to put this amazing documentary together, and especially the amount of time and energy that required. Could you share with us a bit of what they had shared with you?
Well, Nina is the daughter of one of the photographers, and they joined together with an associate producer who's the daughter of Morris Engel and Ruth Orkin, both of whom are very well-known photographers in the States. And basically, their mission was to pay like an homage to their parents and to their generation. And it was very much a family production where they really felt like they had to kind of tip their hats to a generation that was fading away and leaving, and they had to get them before they all died. And they make no bones about the fact that they saw this as something that was in recognition of everything their parents had done before them, and that was very important to them.
We had a huge collection of images that kind of were strewn throughout the documentary, and
they said that they had something like over 1,000 images to choose from, and they culled it down to about 350, and they shot something like 20 hours of film. When they started doing it in 1999, they started thinking about it in the 1980s, and they started shooting it in 1999 when they gathered everybody quite artificially together because they were afraid they were all going to die. and they brought them to a restaurant with an open bar next to the original headquarters on 21st Street. And they basically just got them all together and juiced them up and started talking to them and told them to start talking. And they just shot it as they could because they were afraid these people were going to go. And some of them did go. Like Ruth Gwathmey died shortly thereafter. Joe Schwartz, who's the guy, they brought him up from California, and he was somebody who was very unheralded, nobody knew of. He was working as an offset printer, and he was sort of rediscovered when he came out, and he was one of the vanguard of the Harlem Project, and the Harlem Museum wound up buying all of his photographs, and he's now something like 99 years old, but nobody knows who he is, but he did these really important photographs in Harlem, and he was somewhat rediscovered as a result of doing this.
So, Richard, I mean, what interested you most about the film?
Well, I don't know if people here know me, but I used to be a journalist, and now I teach at Stony Brook in the journalism school there. And now I'm teaching for a semester at Hong Kong University. And as a journalist, I never paid attention to where I came from or who the people were before me. You just went out and did it. But when you start to teach it, you start looking at the people who went before us, and they shape, even though we don't know it, they shape who we are and what we do and how we do it. And it's really, to me, it's great to have something like this as a document, in the great sense of a documentary, because it does. I mean, as Mark said, these people's work and what they've accomplished would otherwise be lost. To me, the most poignant part was Louis Hine, the great, photographer who really had huge impact. But they knew nothing about this guy. And it was like, he walks up the stairs in 1939, and none of them, they were doing what he had done 30 years before. They'd never heard of him. And I think, maybe we're in an era where it's both more possible to happen and less possible to happen. It's more possible because things are moving so fast and we're easily distracted, but it's less possible because the documentaries, all the footage and stuff is now is digitally recorded. The other thing that we've talked about, the man who started this whole thing was a fellow by the name of Jacob Riis. Anybody here ever heard of Jacob Riis? Yes. How the Other Half Lives. From what year?
19th century, anyway. 1890.
1890. He was an immigrant, Dutch or Danish? Danish. Newspaper reporter writing about life and work in the tenements and slums of New York City, and felt incapable of being able to convey the horrors of that life. And so he taught himself photography, and he started taking photographs, and he realized that to do it properly, he had to take them inside. And there was no light, there was no flash. The flash was made with gunpowder. And he was one of the first people to use flash inside, and his photographs of people living in horribly squalid conditions and working in squalid conditions were taken with gunpowder. You've seen these in the old movies, and that's how he did it. And sometimes it didn't work out so well, and some of the photographs of people are sort of, plastered back like this. But he was the forebearer of these people. They didn't know about him. And he did make a big change. How the Other Half Lives was probably the first photojournalistic impact publication ever. Anyway, I just think it's great to have people make this sort of effort, because let's face it, this is a labor of love, but it's something that we all benefit from in the long run.
Yeah, I think the labor of love aspect definitely for me comes with a film as well, because the amount of energy they put in to edit it, and obviously the countless editing choices they had to make, and all the material they had to go through, all the interviews and all the, I mean, I think it's such a nice mix of images, of sound bites, of yeah, obviously original material they got together for this. How long did it take them to put this project together?
Well, they started in the 1980s, and they started shooting in '99, and they finished it last year. So it's quite a long time, and they said that they did something like 50 drafts of the narration, and they would do the narration based, on scene by scene, and they would write it and rewrite it as they discovered things. And some of the things that they discovered very serendipitously, like somebody told them about somebody who knew the wife of somebody who's still alive in Italy, and they would then go and interview her, and they would then get new information that they hadn't had before. I mean, so they had access to footage through museums and galleries, because they are a non-profit corporation in the States, so they're able to get all that stuff for free. But they had to track it all down. The music was very, very expensive. They wanted to get original music. They happened to be friends with Philip Glass. They were friends with people from Chess Records and and other publishers, so they were able to then get access to them. But it took a long time to get that. It cost a lot of money, and then they had to raise the money to do it. But they would say that for every piece that they would have to license, there could be 3 or 4 different rights holders that they had to negotiate with to actually get the right to use it in the film. So it took quite a bit of time to actually do it. And one thing I should say that you might see, there are a lot of photographs in this. There are lots of pans and fades and dissolves, and what's in the world of Apple computers has come to be known as the Ken Burns effect. Jerry Liebling, who's interviewed in this, who's one of the people there, was a photographer and a teacher at Hampshire College in the States, who was Ken Burns' mentor or teacher, who Nina and Daniel respect very much. But that said, they can't stand Ken Burns, like most filmmakers in America. There's just this great resentment of the way in which he's sort of hijacked photography and made it his own. And get over it, Mark. It's actually much more than that, because most documentary filmmakers in America have this sense that Ken Burns basically takes all the guts out of photographic work or even historical work and makes it into pablum for American viewers through PBS. That's just a little side note, but a very important one.
Do you have any questions or comments to make?
When they shut down during the Red Scare, during the McCarthy era, what happened, I wondered, to the, how do you say it, is it Auger and the French guys' glass plates and the Heinz collection that they had taken on and were preserving? I wondered what happened to those 2 really important collections that have become, it sounded like from the film, the property of the League, or they were protecting them. the
Wow,
glass
that's a good
plates and the
question.
negatives of those two photographers. And I just wondered what. That was a question that came up to me.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
wonder what happened.
nothing, as far as I know, nothing was ever confiscated. You know, everybody just ran for, you know, dark corners to get, you know, to get out of the way and protect themselves. But as far as I know, nothing was confiscated and nothing was taken over by the state.
Well, I think obviously these images didn't get lost because I think we know them, and we've seen, I think, even more than the material that was included in the film. So I think it's probably ended up in museum collection or in some other trusted hands, so to preserve this. But yeah, I mean, obviously was very dicey because it could have easily gone lost, and who knows how much has been lost over the decades through other reasons. And obviously fortunately that got saved. And
yeah, I just one more thing, which is that in spite of all of the technological advances that we have now and the ability to have video on demand and YouTube and instantaneous everything, the power still, I'm not a photographer, I'm a scribbler. The power of photojournalism as a way of that wonderful line, finding that little piece in people where, you know, you sort of get you touch people. I was listening to NPR the other day, and they were interviewing a photojournalist who's been working in Mexico for the last 2 years, taking pictures to do with the drug wars down there. And we all know how horrible the vast numbers, the statistics of he takes pictures of the people who grieve for their family, not of the 12 people hanging from the bridge, but of the grieving families. And anyway, it was moving just hearing this being described. And anyway, I don't think it's possible to underestimate the power today still of very, very basic photography, very basic technology. And in some ways, the new technologies can get in the way of that simple connection with, you know, what moves us as human beings. One of the things, I teach a course called News Literacy, how to be an informed consumer in the 21st century. It's what I'm doing here in Hong Kong right now. And one of the things we do is, one of our lectures is on the power of images. And we show 18-year-olds photographs from this era, from the 30s, the 40s. We show them images from Vietnam. They've never seen them. Don't know about Vietnam. Don't know about the Gulf War. Many now seem to know very little about, you know, the war in Iraq. But those images are still arresting to them. Just the images by themselves, and the power of those images to convey meaning, is one of the few enduring things I think we can talk about in journalism.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as a photographer, what I really enjoyed about this, that these images already are close to 80 years old. I mean, they really take you very much back into the time and place, and really make you experience it. And I think the filmmakers, with the audio track and the narrative, they really made the whole story come alive again. And I found it really touching and moving, and really gave me a much better understanding of what it was there and then, what it must have been to live there, and surprising little things when you see the people gathering in front of this candy store. I mean, how many people were hanging out on the street, just standing there and chatting, and because there were no screens to look at home, so they were just out and about, and it just interacting with their neighbors and just kind of killing some time by just walking up and down the street or looking out of the window, just oh there's a dead body, what's going on, and just looking up from their whatever daily paper, just kind of nosing around. It's just, obviously our lives have changed. Technology has changed our life and has the way we communicate all now with our little devices and all kind of typing away and sending messages all across the whole planet in an instant. And there was just really just one-on-one, people just, I don't know, just how are you and what are the kids doing, and then you see them running up and down the street, and it was obviously quite different.
Actually, speaking of dead bodies, one of the more interesting photographers in the group was Ouija, who did police photography in New York, and one of the interesting things about how they got his voice in this film was that they serendipitously came across an LP that was a series of interviews with photographers and how they work. And there he was talking about how much more important it is to him to shoot a dead body than a drunk, because you can tell the difference between a stiff and a drunk on a sidewalk. And they felt that having him in that as part of a voice from the past was something that would add immeasurably to their film. Even though they couldn't interview him, even though he was long gone by the time they had this reunion in '99, and he became one of the most famous of the New York tabloid photographers. And many of these people, photography changed in the 20s and the 30s with the Leica and the small camera, they can take snapshots. But a lot of these guys were roaming around with large format cameras. Like Ouija had a big camera with a big flash, and Nina's father, Walter, had a camera on sticks with a cloth wrapped over his head. And they were getting their shots in a very traditional way. So there's a real mix in the formats they used, the styles they used, but they were still all doing street photography. And they were changing it for all of us. And as Rick said, we all stand on the shoulders of everybody who comes before us, because in the late 60s and 70s, I belonged to a group in the States called Newsreel, where we used to do basically film propaganda. And actually, I didn't make this connection or think about it until just over the weekend, that what we were doing was actually generated by groups like Magnum, who were doing it in photography, but earlier than them, people like this who were doing it in the Photo League, and concurrently, it was people like the group theater in New York in the 30s who were doing the theatrical side of it, and then after them, it was the Actors Studio, who then gave rise to people like De Niro and Streep and all the rest. So there are all these strands that develop in different sides of the arts and of journalism, where none of us do anything that's necessarily all that original. There are lots of people who came before us who did it 30, 40, 80 years ago, and it's quite fascinating when you connect the dots.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how Louis Hine managed to probably bring his at least 8x10 or larger plate camera up the Empire. I mean, the steel of what you then became the Empire State. So just
the strong back.
anybody of you would like to make a further contribution, please?
Because it's such an interesting film. It's not just for photographers, it shows so much of American history as well. So where's it going to end up in?
They're showing it all over, and Rick has asked about getting a copy to show at Hong Kong U, which I think is going to be organized. The photo exhibition of all of these pictures has been touring the States, and it's in a show called The Radical Camera.
Is the film available anywhere? I mean,
the film, well, the film is being shown. Actually, the film is on iTunes, and it's something like the 15th most popular download in Australia, which is, I don't know how that happened, but it has happened. And in a way, that's one of the ways that they're planning on making back some of their money, because it was an inexpensive film to make. But
is there a website?
I think there is.
It's a film title, I think.
Yeah, just ordinarymiracles.com, I guess. You know.
I think when you Google the title.
You know, but we do have copies of it to make available around town if people want to use it for various events or whatever. And one of the things that we were talking about earlier this evening is how cool it would be to have an exhibition at the FCC on the wall of some of the photographs, if we can get that organized. But that would be up to the organizers of the photo exhibition, and that is happening in at least 5 museums around the States right now.
All right. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this, and we're looking forward to seeing you again here at the FCC. Thank you. Good night.